Miss Beckwith, first day jitters. Okay, so I admit that the first day of school I was so nervous that the butterflies in my stomach were more like pigeons flying around my insides. Mum and Dad were probably a little nervous too, but they acted all excited for me, taking pictures of me and Via before we left the house, since it was Via's first day of school too. Up until a few days before, we still weren't sure I would be going to school at all. After my tour of the school, Mum and Dad had reversed sides on whether I should go or not. Mum was now the one saying I shouldn't go, and Dad was saying I should. Dad had told me he was really proud of how I handled myself and Julian, and that I was turning into quite a strong man. And I heard him tell Mum that he now thought she had been right all along. But Mum, I could tell, wasn't sure anymore. When Dad told her that he and Vi wanted to walk me to school today too, since it was on the way to the subway station, Mum seemed relieved that we would all be going together, and I guess I was too. Even though Beecher Prep is just a few blocks from our house, I've only been on that block a couple of times before. In general, I was trying to avoid blocks where there are a lot of kids roaming around. On our block, everybody knows me, and I know everybody. I know every brick and every tree trunk and every crack in the sidewalk. I know Mrs. Grimaldi, the lady who's always sitting by her window, and the old guy who walks up and down the street whistling like a bird. I know the deli on the corner where Mum gets our bagels, and the waitress at the coffee shop, who all call me honey and give me lollipops, whether they see me. I love my neighbourhood of North River Heights, which is why it was so strange to be walking down these blocks feeling like it was all new to me suddenly. Amesfort Avenue, a street I've been down a million times, looked totally different for some reason. Full of people I never saw before, waiting for buses, pushing strollers. We crossed Amesfort and turned up Heights Place. Via walked next to me, like she usually does, and Mum and Dad were behind us. As soon as we turned the corner, we saw all the kids in front of the school, hundreds of them, talking to each other in little groups, laughing or standing with their parents who were talking with other parents. I kept my head way down. "Everyone's just as nervous as you are," said Via in my ear. "Just remember that this is everyone's first day of school, okay?" Mr. Tushman was greeting students and parents in the front of the school entrance. I have to admit, so far, nothing bad had happened. I didn't catch anyone staring or even noticing me. Only once did I look up to see girls looking my way and whispering with their hands cupped over their mouths, but they looked away when they saw me and noticed them. We reached the front entrance. "Okay, so this is it, big boy," said Dad, putting his hands on the top of my shoulders. "Have a great first day. I love you," said Via, giving me a big hug and a kiss. "You too," I said. "I love you, Oggy," said Dad, hugging me. "Bye." Then Mum hugged me, but I could tell she was about to cry, which would have totally embarrassed me, so I just gave her a fast, hard hug, turned, and disappeared into the school. Locks. I went straight to room 301 on the 3rd floor. Now I was glad I'd gone on a little tour because I knew exactly where to go and didn't have to look up once. I noticed that some kids were definitely staring at me now. I did my thing and pretended not to notice. I went inside the classroom and the teacher was writing on the chalkboard while all the kids started sitting at different desks. The desks were in a half circle facing the chalkboard, so I chose the desk in the middle towards the back, which I thought would make it hard for anyone to stare at me. I still kept my head down, just looking up enough from under my bangs to see everyone's feet. As the desk started to fill up, I did notice that no one sat down next to me. A couple of times, someone was about to sit next to me and then changed his or her mind at the last minute and sat somewhere else. "Hey, August." It was Charlotte, giving me her little wave as she sat down at a desk in the front of the class. Why anyone would ever choose to sit at the front of the class, I don't know. "Hey," I said, nodding. "Hello." Then I noticed Julian was sitting a few seats away from her, talking to some other kids. I know he saw me, but he didn't say hello. Suddenly, someone was sitting down next to me. It was Jack. Jack. "What's up?" he said, nodding at me. "Hey, Jack," I answered, waving my hand, which I immediately wished I hadn't done because it felt kind of uncool. "Okay, kids. Okay, everybody. Settle down," said the teacher, now facing us. She had written her name, Mrs. Petosa, on the chalkboard. "Everybody find a seat, please. Come in," she said to the couple of kids who had just walked in the room. "There's a seat there and right there." She hadn't noticed me yet. "Now the first thing I want everyone to do is to stop talking and..." She noticed me. "Put your backpacks down and quiet down." She had only hesitated for a millionth of a second, but I could tell the moment she saw me. Like I said, I'm used to it by now. "I'm going to take attendance and do the seating chart," she continued, sitting on the edge of her desk. Next to her were 3 neat rows of accordion folders. "When I call your name, come up and I'll hand you a folder with your name on it. It contains your class schedule and your combination log, which you should not try and open until I tell you to. Your locker number is written on the class schedule. Be forewarned that some lockers are not right outside the class, but down the hall. And before anyone even thinks of asking, no, you cannot switch lockers and you cannot switch locks. Then, if there's time at the end of this period, we're all going to get to know each other a little bit better. Okay? Okay." She picked up the clipboard on her desk and started reading the names out loud. "Okay. So, Julian Albans," she said, looking up. Julian raised his hand and said, "Here," at the same time. "Hi, Julian," she said, making a note of her seating chart. She picked up the very first folder and held it out towards him. "Come pick it up," she said, kind of in no nonsense. He got up and took it from her. "Zymena Chin." She handed a folder to each kid as she read off their names. As she went down the list, I noticed the seat next to me was the only one still empty, even though there were 2 kids sitting at one desk, just a few seats away. When she called the name of one of them, a big kid named Henry Joplin, who already looked like a teacher, looked like one of them, looked like a teenager, she said, "Henry, there's an empty desk right over there. Why don't you take that seat, okay?" She handed him his folder and pointed to the desk next to mine. Although I didn't look at him directly, I could tell Henry did not want to move next to me. Just by the way he dragged his backpack on the floor as he came over, like he was moving in slow motion. Then he plopped his backpack up really high on the right side of the desk, so it was kind of like a wall between his desk and mine. "Maya Mokovich," Mrs. Pester was saying. "Here," said the girl, about 4 desks down from mine. "Miles Norrie." "Here," said the kid that had been sitting with Henry Joplin. As he walked back to his desk, I saw him shoot Henry a poor you look. "August Pullman," she said. "Here," I said quietly, raising my hand a bit. "Hi, August," she said, smiling at me very nicely when I went up to get my folder. I kind of felt everyone's eyes burning in the back of my head for a few seconds. I stood in the front of the class and everybody looked down when I walked back to my desk. I resisted spinning the combination when I sat down, even though everyone else was doing it, because she had specifically told us not to. I was already pretty good at opening locks anyway, because I've used them on my bike. Henry kept trying to open his lock but couldn't do it. He was getting frustrated and kind of crushing underneath his breath. Mrs. Petosa called out the next few names. The last name was Jack Will. After she handed Jack his folder, she said, "Okay, so everybody write your combination down somewhere safe so that you won't forget it, okay? But if you do forget it, which happens at least 3.2 times per semester, Mrs. Garcia has a list of all the combination numbers. Now go ahead, take your locks out of your folder and spend a couple of minutes practicing how to open them. Though I know some of you went ahead and did that anyway. She was looking at Henry when she said that. And in the meanwhile, I'll tell you guys a little something about myself. And then you guys can tell me a little about yourselves. And we'll get to know each other. Sounds good? Good. She smiled at everyone, though I felt like she was smiling at me the most. It wasn't a shiny smile like Miss Garcia's smile, but a normal smile, like she meant it. She looked very different from what I thought teachers were going to look like. I guess I thought she looked like Mrs. Fowl from Jimmy Neutron, an old lady with a big bun on the top of her head. But in fact, she looked exactly like Mon Mothma from Star Wars Episode 5, haircut. Kind of like a boy's and a big white shirt, kind of like a tunic. She turned around and started writing on the chalkboard. Henry still couldn't get his lock open, and he was getting more and more frustrated every time someone else popped one open. He got really annoyed when I was able to open mine on the first try. The funny thing is, if he hadn't put the backpack between us, I most definitely would have offered to help him.
Around the room. Miss Petosa told a little about who she was. It was boring stuff about where she originally came from and how she always wanted to teach, and she left a job on Wall Street about 6 years ago to pursue her dream and teach kids. She ended by asking if anyone had any questions, and Julian raised his hand. Yes, she had to look at the list of rooms named Julian. That's cool, about how you're pursuing your dream, he said. Thank you. You're welcome, he smiled proudly. Okay, so why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, Julian? Actually, here's what I want everyone to do. Think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. Actually, wait a minute. How many of you came from Beecher Lower School? About half the kids raised their hand. Okay, so a few of you already know each other. But the rest of you, I guess, are new to the school, right? So everyone think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. And if you know some of the other kids, try to think of things they don't know already about you. Okay? Okay. So let's start with Julian and we'll go around the room. Julian scrunched up his face and started tapping his forehead like he was thinking really hard. Okay, whenever you're ready, Miss Petosa said. Okay, so number 1 is that, do me a favour and start with your names, okay? Said Miss Petosa. It'll help me remember everyone. Oh, okay, so my name is Julian, and the number 1 thing I'd like to tell everyone about myself is that I just got Battleground Mystic for my Wii, and it's totally awesome. And the number 2 thing is that we got a ping pong table this summer. Very nice, I love ping pong, said Miss Petosa. Does anybody have any questions for Julian? Is Battleground Mystic multiplayer or 1-player, said the kid named Miles. Not those kind of questions, guys, said Miss Petosa. Okay, so how about you? She pointed to Charlotte, probably because her desk was the closest to the front. Oh, sure. Charlotte didn't hesitate for even a second, like she knew exactly what she was going to say. My name is Charlotte. I have 2 sisters, and we just got a new puppy named Suki in July. We got her from an animal shelter, and she's so cute. That's great, Charlotte. Thank you, said Miss Petosa. Okay then, who's next? Lamb to the slaughter. Like a lamb to the slaughter, something that you say about someone who goes somewhere calmly, not knowing that something unpleasant is going to happen to them. I googled it last night. That's what I was thinking when Miss Petosa called my name, and suddenly it was my turn to talk. My name is August, I said, and yeah, I kind of mumbled it. What? Said someone. Can you speak up, honey? Said Miss Petosa. My name is August, I said louder, forcing myself to look up. I have a sister named Via and a dog named Daisy, and that's it. Wonderful, said Miss Petosa. Anyone have questions for August? No one said anything. Okay, you're next, said Miss Petosa to Jack. Wait, I have a question for August, said Julian, raising his hand. Why do you have that tiny braid in the back of your hair? Is that like a Padawan thing? Yeah, I nodded. What's a Padawan thing? Said Miss Petosa, smiling at me. It's from Star Wars, answered Julian. A Padawan is a Jedi apprentice. Oh, interesting, answered Miss Petosa, looking at me. So are you into Star Wars, August? I guess, I nodded, not looking up because I really wanted to just slide under my desk. Who's your favourite character? Julian asked. I started thinking maybe he wasn't so bad. Jango Fett. What about Darth Sidious? He said. Do you like him?